More people every day are ditching animal products, embracing plant-based foods, and speaking up for what matters. With my experience as an international instructor for vegan nutrition and an award-winning author, I interview experts, innovators, and celebrities about the global movement towards a plant-based future. Do you want to learn how to combat the injustice in our food system affecting your health, the animals, and the planet? Well, you're in the right place. It all starts here with Eating Like You Give a Damn. Welcome to the Eating Like You Give a Damn podcast, the place to discover your passion for plant-based living, one bite at a time. I'm your host, Stephanie Harder. If you're looking for some clarity around what the deal is with dairy and why a professional athlete, or better yet, an Olympian, would choose to ditch it, then this episode is for you. Dotsie Bausch has become a powerful influencer for plant-based eating for athletes and non-athletes alike. In the Olympics, while riding for Team USA while facing staggering odds, she produced a medal at the 2012 London Olympic Games, 8 U.S. national championships, 2 Pan American gold medals, and a world record. You can find her triumphant story chronicled in the Netflix documentary Personal Gold. Dotsie is one of the stars in the newly released film The Game Changers, which chronicles one of the world's most dangerous myths about protein and has been named by VegNews in 2019 as one of the top 20 most influential vegans in the world. Her popular TEDx talk titled Olympic Level Compassion has garnered over 275,000 views and has been a catalyst of change for thousands of people. Her latest initiative is founding the nonprofit called Switch for Good, proving that cow's milk is not part of a high-performance diet. In this interview, we chat about how Dotsie once struggled with an eating disorder that nearly claimed her life before choosing a vegan lifestyle. And she sets the record straight about some people's concerns about whether or not veganism is an eating disorder. She shines some light on dietary racism, one of the most overlooked food injustice issues directly affecting the livelihood of our African American, Asian, and Latino populations. And I think you'll really feel like your eyes have been opened to this issue. And she explains what milk is meant for, how it's produced, and why it's not as healthy or even necessary as we've been taught to believe. Plus, Dotsie gives us fun and helpful tips during your vegan transition for the upcoming holidays. Hey, health coaches, if you are a plant-powered coach or wellness practitioner and you want help with getting clients and growing a thriving online coaching practice, I started a Facebook group just for you. Whether you just graduated or are trying to figure out how to attract your ideal clients consistently while loving your work and the impact you're creating in the world, you'll learn how to design your program that delivers a massive transformation for your clients while helping animals and the planet too. Head over to eatinglikeyougivadamn.com/coaching and request to join. Now, it's time to dig in with Dotsie Bausch. Dotsie, my love, I'm super excited for you to be here on the show with me. Welcome.
Thank you, Stephanie. I'm excited too.
This is going to be an awesome conversation. I'm so excited to go a little bit deeper with you. I saw The Game Changers like as soon as it came out in the theater, and I was just like, man, this chick is freaking awesome. So I'm super happy to have you here on the show and be able to share with all of the listeners what you got going on, girlfriend, because it's a lot of good stuff.
I'm glad you liked the film.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
Cool.
Oh, yeah. And then we'll get more into that as we kind of go through this. But
okay,
where I like to start with the guests is kind of going back to the beginning, back before you discovered a vegan friendly lifestyle. What was your family life like? Where are you from, and what was your idea about health and your feeling about animals? How did that all start?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in the Midwest or the South, however you want to look at it, whether you're from the Midwest or the South thinks it's the Midwest. I grew up in Kentucky. So I had an amazing upbringing and have amazing parents and family. And I grew up just like the typical kind of all-American kid. I grew up eating everything, including animals. I grew up eating, barbecue and brisket and macaroni and cheese and Kentucky Fried Chicken. And my dad's side of the family was actually in the thoroughbred horse racing industry. And I grew up riding saddlebred horses. So I grew up with the notion and thinking that I loved animals, because I did. We had dogs and rabbits and hamsters and gerbils and fish. And, I was constantly begging my mom for another animal that we could add into the mix. I love spending time with them. And, but I was still in that mindset of just not really, enlightened that if I love animals, then I'm probably not eating them. Right. Like that would make sense. So I was 35 years, just never really thought for a second that the fact that I loved animals maybe meant not eating them. So my whole history is just loving animals and putting them on my plate, which now just gets me teary-eyed even saying it, and thinking back to how much misery I've caused. But anyway, turned over a new leaf, but we can go into that.
Yeah, I can totally empathize with that too, because I know that when I first had that, that moment of clarity and made that true connection, I too was just like, like looking back on that shock that I had in that moment up until now, 10 years later, where I feel the same way. I think back to that moment and I'm just like, God, how did I not know in the first place? Like, what was I telling myself? I have no idea.
Right. How did that not add up? Yeah. Loving some and eating others and wearing others and being entertained by others. And it's a whole like mapping that we have of animals in our culture.
Yeah, exactly. I'd love to go deeper with that with you specifically because of your connection with building Switch for Good and all of that good stuff. But I know that there's something very interesting about your history too, where you were battling an eating disorder. And I know that I've got some listeners that are probably really, really interested in that because there seems to be some sort of a correlation with some people. I've read it online. I don't know where this came from at all, but veganism and anorexia are somehow like related in some way. And I'm wondering if you've heard or read about that too. And then maybe tell us a little bit about your experience. What led you to the eating disorder?
Well, I get emails all the time about it, because if you look at veganism as a restrictive style of eating, then of course it can be correlated and connected to all types of eating disorders, really. So, as you and I both know, it is, for us, the opposite of restrictive. It's complete and pure and open freedom. It's living in alignment with your values. It's living with life on your plate every day instead of death. And it's getting more connected to this earth and the species that we share it with. So it is a full-blown lifestyle. Obviously, whole food, plant-based eating is a way of eating, whereas veganism is certainly a way of living on your plate with your clothes, with what you buy and put in your house, not wearing leather, not buying, so that is a complete lifestyle of just choosing compassion and love over cruelty. So when I get those emails, I try to really explain that and kind of explain my journey with, when I switched over about 10 years ago, like you, it was about 9.5 years ago, I was completely 100% well and healed from my eating disorder, and had been for a good 10 years. So they didn't run congruent for me at all. I mean, it wasn't a part of my healing was not whole food, plant-based eating or veganism. It was diving deep into my pain and my angst and my self-loathing and all that was going on inside of me. So, but as I moved over to not eating animals, which at that point I was 37, almost 37, and just a couple of years out from the Olympic Games. I came in via the ethical route, which is, kind of maybe not shocking, since I was just talking about, my passion and compassion for animals and who we share the planet with. But I very quickly was, as you saw in the Game Changers, just kind of blown away with what the whole food plant-based eating did for my performance and did for my output, and had me stand on the Olympic podium at 39 and a half, which is the oldest competitor ever in history in that discipline, male or female. So it was, and I'm only saying that not for like, yay me, I'm saying it for yay not eating animals, because,
yes.
Nutrition obviously is, extraordinarily important in an elite athlete's process, right? Training and what you put in to be able to recover from training. So to be able to do it on a plant-based diet was surprising to me too, and many others, but really freaking cool, because now I get to tell people about that, and then I, of course, never gone back. So I'm about 10 years in and feel amazing as ever.
Yeah. Yeah. At what point did you have that moment of like making that connection with what was on your plate, what you had been growing up eating, what you were probably taught to eat as an athlete?
Sure.
Where did you make that connection with animals and kicking them off of your plate?
I saw some footage of what goes on behind closed doors of our industrial agriculture food system. Just, I don't want to go into gory detail. It's very easy to find on the internet today. It wasn't as easy back then, but it's not hidden anymore. You can watch Earthlings if you want and just get the whole scoop in a 90-minute documentary. But it was like this window of time that I felt almost completely numb for this period of time while I was watching this. And I remember thinking, as I'm watching it, even that, well, this is horrible, but this clearly is not something that goes on every day, all day. It was also in another country because they were speaking a different language. So I remember also thinking, oh, that's horrible, but that doesn't go on here in America, because, I'm sure that our government protects and serves its people. I thought so. And that must include our food system, right? Like that should include our food system. That should include what people are eating and what they're putting on their plate. So that took me on a whole journey of just, spiraling down into the rabbit hole, doing much more research to understand what I had seen, and that is indeed the case here, right in our own backyard.
Yeah, exactly. Now, as far as your journey is concerned, where along the spectrum of your timeline did that correlate with like your eating disorder and healing from that, and then making your way into the Olympics, and then like what's the timeline there?
As far as that'd be helpful, right?
We're just putting the pieces together.
Yeah. So I right around the time I graduated college is when my eating disorder got really bad. I graduated and I had majored in journalism and thought I wanted to go into hard news, and did an internship. I went to school in Philadelphia and recognized at the final hour, right around graduation, that I actually didn't want to do what I thought I wanted to do pretty much my whole life at all. And so that just sent me on a tailspin of fear and anxiety and worry. I didn't have the money to go back to college and study something else. I was like knee deep in debt from school loans. And I just felt really, I was just frightened. And so it put me in this space of feeling just very out of control of my life. And I definitely have a bit of a control type personality, of many of us do. And so slowly but surely, I just started to place control over my intake of my food, because that was the one thing that I felt like I could have control over, which is true, right? That's pretty much maybe all we have control over in our lives at any given day. So I started to slowly but surely control my food, and it just completely took over my life and spiraled way out of control. And I got very, very sick in a pretty short period of time with anorexia that then moved into bulimia. So that was about a 5-year period of time where I was really quite sick. Towards the end of my journey of healing from that, which was about a 2-year journey, my therapist suggested that I try some kind of like sport or exercise or movement, just something to get me moving my body in a healthy way again. Because I definitely had the over exercise aspect of anorexia, which is really quite common, part of the disorder. And so she wanted to just kind of move me, as I was so much better, she knew that I would want to be able to move my body in a healthy way again. So she had me pick something, and I just chose cycling, really, quite frankly, because I was living out in Los Angeles by that period of time. It's sunny all the time here and beautiful and warm. And I was like, well, a bike would be cool, because then I could ride up and down Pacific Coast Highway and just enjoy the wind in my face and that freedom that I thought I would experience on a bike, because I had not felt free for many years. I'd been, just in chains and in the confines of my eating disorder. So I chose cycling. It was a whim. And, I literally just kept going with it. I mean, my story is just a story of not quitting, because I wasn't all that good in the beginning. I was never even that talented in it, meaning physically talented. Like when I went to the US Olympic Training Center and got tested, blood tested, watt bike tested, measurements of performance and output, I came like very marginal amongst, those that may make it to the Olympic Games. So that point, I started cycling at 26, and by 29, I was starting to get good, and by 30 on the U.S. national team and traveling around. And then Olympics was 2012. So from the time I started cycling, it was a good 13-year journey to get there. Yeah.
Yeah. So you just like woke up one day and decided, you know what? I think I'll enter the Olympics with this. You enjoyed it that much, and you're that competitive. I love it.
I know. No, I mean, when I started cycling, I had no dreams or aspirations at all to go to the Olympics. I mean, just because that sounded insane. I was just loving being well and being free. And then I started racing, and I liked that. I liked how it felt. I liked the competitiveness out of it. And I wanted to see where I could take it. But it wasn't until probably, a couple years out from Olympics that I realized that I had a shot. So it was a long road, as it should be, right. As it always is, to the Olympics, right? Because you can't just enter, like you have to obviously qualify, and there's a lot of people fighting for the spots, and you don't find out you make the team till a few months before.
Right. So then let's talk about your nutrition during that journey, right? So what was your nutrition like when you were first starting to really train hardcore, when you knew you were entering the Olympics? Like, what was that like for you?
Well, I mean, I was an omnivore till 35. So, I mean, that was 8 years of my cycling career, which in that period of time, I was eating whatever, because I had come out of my eating disorder and really had, created some healthy rules where I was not going to be weighing any food, counting any calories, measuring any ingredients of foods. And I was very clear with my nutritionists about that. And they were very respectful. So I was just eating whatever, literally anything and everything, and just trying to recover and get enough calories in, and just I didn't really think all that much about food. I've never been a very good cook at all, so I just ate because I had to eat. And but by the time I had moved over to whole food plant-based, that's when food started getting really interesting and exciting to me. And I think it's because I was soulfully connected to it now. There was a reason I was eating the way that I was eating, and it felt very empowering to say no to animals and animal products. I love that experience of saying, no, I'm not going to have that, or that's not, at a restaurant, if they didn't really have, something that that a whole food plant-based type of meal, that it was empowering, saying, that I'll go eat after, or, and not bending to say, oh yeah, I'm going to eat that. So, I just started diving into, the more nutrient dense foods. I really started recognizing that it was the foods that were high in antioxidants, high in nutrients, high in vitamins, high in minerals that were going to help propel me to recover faster and help propel me to be able to produce more output and bring my performance up. So instead of focusing on what you hear a lot of athletes talk about, macronutrients, right? Carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. I was focused on micronutrients and just really tried to fill my plate with as much color as possible. And if I did that, I easily was getting in enough macronutrients. I think we are we're like way over obsessed with macronutrients. And nobody needs to be, unless you are a physique bodybuilder. Like those are the only people that maybe have to like move that around a little bit as they bulk up and then shred for competition. The rest of us, so what is that, like 0.5% of the population? I don't even know, including many professional athletes. Like if you are getting enough calories and nutrients, you are getting enough protein. You are probably getting enough carbohydrates. Like it just automatically is in all of the foods, because every single plant food has all three macronutrients. That's the other thing, that if something was alive, they have carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So all plant foods have those in them. So you fill your plate with them and you're going to get enough.
We've been so fed this information about what we're supposed to be eating as far as how we're supposed to be getting our nutrition, particularly protein. And yeah, it's interesting. So that's why I really love what you're doing with Switch for Good, particularly.
Yeah, it's really been, it's just been so long that we have been fed this information, mostly spirited by industry and selling their products to us, right? I mean, that's most of the well, not most, that's all of the marketing that we get, right? And you see some of that, a lot of it in Game Changers, right? With the meat industry and how much they push that idea on us. So, it seeps in. That seeps in over time, and it seeps in, it seeped in when it started, in the 50s and 60s and 70s, when our parents were kind of learning what they should or would or end up putting on their plate. And that just filtered straight down. So it was just like a part of Americana, growing up. And so there's so many things that we don't question. You just don't even question that that's the case or not the case. It just is. And so that's what you're eating. And that was really the impetus of Switch for Good, is stopping, taking a breath, and just asking the question, does that make sense that cow's milk is of full good nutritional value for a human being, an adult human being, right? Because we're not still needing breast milk from our human mother. So why are just questioning that whole belief, and then peeling back the layers, and of course understanding that not only do we not need it, it's quite noxious for us to be ingesting. So I think just in anything, we need to just be asking more questions, just open, honest questions about not only our diet, but the cars we drive and what's in our homes and the relationships we build. I mean, it's just being a little more inquisitive.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%, because I know that, back when I first found out this information, I never even thought to ask those questions. And so I know there's still a huge part of our population that, because we're just so inundated with the advertising, the marketing, it's everywhere, right? And then every time, a study comes out that's not funded by the meat, dairy, or egg industry, or pharmaceutical industry, there's another study that contradicts it.
Right. Yeah. And if you ask people, or at least in my experience, when I ask people why they eat meat, I've never heard an actual reason. Like, it's just, we eat meat because everyone else eats meat. I mean, that's the truth. I mean, I'll put myself in that box. For 35 years. I didn't have this whole reason that I could give you. It was like, because that's just what we do. So those are people's reasons. And it's like, I started questioning, going, okay, that's not a valid reason, Dotsie. There's a lot of things in your life that you have chosen not to do that a lot of other people do. And so that's not like a solid reason or defense for why you're doing this. So that helps people to think, me to think, if it's just like, when people say, why are you vegan or why are you vegetarian? I'll be like, well, why are you an omnivore? It's like they never really know. I didn't either. Because it's the norm, right? Like that's the carnistic view, like that's the norm. And then vegetarian and veganism is like this niche, like, thing that we should question. It's like, no, we should question all of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as far as you getting that amazing role that you got to participate in the Game Changers, how did that all come about for you?
It was, I was connected with, James Wilkes, who is the one that takes the journey to figure out how he can recover well from blowing his knees out, the UFC fighter that takes us on the journey in the film. Brendan Brazier connected me with him. So Brendan Brazier is the author of The Thrive Diet, and he and I were friendly. And so he just said, to James, you guys should go to lunch. I think she would be good for the film. And this is super early on. I mean, this was 2016 that he and I met and sat down for lunch. And then he decided, we'd maybe do the story. So then then we did the interview and stuff, but it feels like a bazillion years ago, but it was a while ago. It's 2019 now. Right. So, So anyway, that's how.
Yeah. Nice. I know he had been working on that project for so long. I think he said a total of like 8 years he had been working on that film when I got to interview him a couple of episodes ago, but just like hearing that journey was just super amazing. And I just know that as a woman, I was just super excited. First of all, that there was a film coming out that was particularly speaking to the men because, we know a lot of vegans and vegetarians that are already, we're predominantly female. I mean, if we look at the metrics, right?
Yeah.
But the guys, they just still like, got to get that meat sort of a thing. So I was excited to see that. But at the same time, I still felt like, I can't wait to see a woman up there talking. And so when you popped up on the screen, I was like, yes.
A little bit of female in there.
Yeah,
no, it does. It's good that it speaks to the men. You're right. Because it's like the stats of every 100 women that go vegetarian, 86 of them stay vegetarian. And for men, it's like 16% of them, 16 of them out of 100. I mean, it's just like really, it's men just take a lot of flack for what's on their plate. It's lame. They can't order like a quinoa and spinach salad when they're out with their, work friends or, out at a party, right? Like, they're like, why are you ordering rabbit food? Whereas nobody questions if you or I ordered one of those or a quinoa salad with some, fruit and, that's like, oh, that's normal. So this film does a great job of just kind of twisting that whole thing on its head.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I know I've had, the luck of being able to have a partner in my life that when I was ready to take this journey and start making the transition, because it was pulling on my heartstrings, it's all of a sudden I woke up and I knew who I was supposed to be. My husband came along with me on that very journey. And that was really incredible. So did you have that sort of same experience?
I did. We're very lucky, girl.
We are.
I've got some friends that it's like, that's not the case in their home. And I just can almost not even imagine. Like, I just don't now, I guess we just would have taken it together and whatever happened and we would have worked it out. But it's super totally incredibly awesome that we're on the same journey. He's like,
we're not trying to pour salt in the wound, listeners. I know. This is experience.
It's just really nice. He was kind of like a little bit right after me, so I was still, he's half Filipino. So he grew up eating a lot of fish. And so that was the last thing he gave up. And I still remember I'm vegan and I would go to like Whole Foods and I would go up to the fish counter and I would literally ask the guy, I'm like, I need the fish that was like, just like clocked on the head, just in a moment, didn't know it happened. Like, I know the guy thought I was mad and, but he played into it and was probably BSing me. And he'd be like, oh yes. And he was like, and then finally I got to where I was like, I can't do this anymore. You're going to have to go buy your own fish. He wasn't eating anything else, any other animal products, such as fish. And then one January 1st, he just was like, okay, that's it. That whole system is horrible too. I'm done. And he never took another bite. He's very strong like that. But he said, I asked him just the other night, I said, if I died, would you go back to eating animals? He was like, you're weird that you ask those questions, first of all. But he's like, no, why? And I was like, okay, cool. I can die now. So it's like,
that's so funny that you say that because I've actually had that very thought with my own husband. I just haven't asked him the question yet. And it's just because, like, you know, I mean, like, he knows how to cook a couple of things, but, you know, he by no means like knows how to like put together a nutritious meal, you know? So I'm like, are you gonna, like, the thoughts in the back of my mind, like, are you gonna cave, like, if I'm not around, and like your guy friends are like, you need your protein?
I know. Well, ask him and then you'll know, because I feel better now. Like if I get hit by a bus, he's gonna like not go back to
There's peace of mind with that, right? You know the answer.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So now, okay, so now you've moved into the space of true activism, and I know that for you, of course, that started like when you started making these changes for your own life, but then you started hitting the limelight, and I know that you got to partake in putting together a commercial in 2018 for the closing ceremony of the Olympic Games. Tell us how that transpired and how it went.
Yeah, we have another one coming for next year for Tokyo 2020 with some big athletes. So many more athletes are kind of like gotten the memo in the last 2 years and have, you know, taken out. So, well, it really started, honestly, just as I was already saying, where I just realized that we needed to do a better job of questioning why we're drinking cow's milk, why the industry has said milk does a body good, right? And got milk and built with chocolate milk and all of the monikers that they use, and most of them, you know, perpetuating the myth via athletes, you know, putting athletes up on the podium and saying, you know, this is really good food for athletes. So it started that way, just that desire to, you know, have some harder questions asked. And I mean, the milk and the United States Olympic Committee have been in bed together since before 2008. So it was still, there was still a sponsorship of the U.S. Olympic Committee in those years when I was still racing. And at the training centers, Colorado Springs and Chula Vista, mostly where I trained at the Olympic training centers, the cafeteria was just full of dairy foods. I mean, they even had a bar called the Recovery Bar, and it was just whey protein and yogurt and milk and cottage cheese. And it was disgusting. Like there was nothing. Now I'm sure there's some alternatives on the Recovery Bar, but back then there weren't. It's like nobody was, you know, asking for sprouted brown rice protein or other things to put in. So I just was like, you know, this is so gross. And so many people have major digestive issues with cow's milk, right? Over half the world's population. It's almost 70%. I mean, that's a problem right there. That's a food justice issue is what that is, that we are, as a country anyway, our government is pushing a food group on people, on their people that can't properly digest it. And obviously there's loads of issues with not being able to digest something properly, right? From stomach cramping to bloating to diarrhea to constipation to waking up with stuffy nose to mucus in your lungs to psoriasis to, I mean, you know, almost every day I talk to somebody who has some kind of, you know, issue, whether it's a skin condition or, you know, a digestive issue. And 9.5 times out of 10, if they take out dairy, it's gone. Mm-hmm. People just don't even know. They don't know that they have an intolerance to it. They don't know that they have either an intolerance or a full-blown dairy allergy. I mean, it could be either, you know, and it's like 3% of the population have a gluten intolerance. And like 2% of the population have an issue with shellfish. And you know, people are always trying to put it in that same category. Well, it's just like if you have, you know, a wheat intolerance. Like, no, it's not, because it's like almost 70% has this issue with dairy. So, you know, for athletes, obviously that is, and as you know, it's higher in people of color. So it's like 75 to 80% of people of African descent. It's like 98% of people of Asian descent. It's 85% of people Latino descent. So, I mean, that's almost everyone, you know, I mean, those are really high percentages. And so athletes drinking this and drinking it or eating it, dairy foods, and having this issue, obviously that's a major performance inhibitor. You know, like if have mucus in your lungs, or you are waking up with severe digestive, you know, stomach cramping from, you know, having it before you went to bed or whatever. So, yeah, it's just that was kind of our launch at Switch for Good, and then since then we've turned into a full blown 501c3 and have all sorts of awesome activism projects, and we've been growing. You know, we've got we have a whole team now, and working hard towards next year, because it's a big year for us.
Yeah,
2020. Yeah.
fantastic. Oh, I'm excited to see what more is coming. This is great. Good stuff. Now, I know that you also, just to kind of extend what you were just talking about with the injustice, the social injustice. I mean, we obviously know that there's, animal injustice there, but
Right.
you got to participate in the USDA dietary guidelines hearing for
Hmm.
2020 through
Hmm.
2025, because I think they do that hearing every 5 years. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they review the dietary guidelines for Americans every 5 years. So they'll
Yeah.
listen to public commentary the year before they're going to change it again. So yeah.
Yeah. And I know I'm going to put some links in the show notes so that way listeners can actually go and see some of the highlights from that. But you got to speak, which was amazing.
Hmm.
And you were talking about, dairy and what you were just talking about as far as, athletes are concerned. And can you just give us like the little Reader's Digest version of what your core message was to these people that are making these decisions on our behalf about nutrition?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my commentary was, we had 3 minutes, so it's not long. You couldn't really go too deep into the trenches, but I specifically, my ask was that they remove dairy as a food group on the dietary guidelines for Americans next year, so 2020, and that they'll release it in the summer. So the public commentary section of the USD website actually doesn't close until May of next year. So if any of your listeners want to write in and share how they feel about our current plate, right, our current dietary guidelines, they can do so. So that's lovely. Or that's probably not a great way to describe it, but it's good that we have the option to do that. How much they'll listen to it is probably another conversation. But
Sure.
so that was my ask, and I gave some pretty hard facts about the health detriments of dairy. But where I really feel that the power was in this idea of food injustice, and that putting dairy foods on a plate for Americans when way over half of them cannot tolerate or digest it and have really noxious outcomes from having dairy in their system is a form of dietary racism. And that's what my main point was.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I know that Dr. Milton Mills was also there and speaking on that sort of a
Yeah.
subject as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
yeah, which is great that people are actually speaking up about this particular injustice, because even, especially people of color, like they don't really know that there's a big injustice happening there.
No. Yeah. We just don't know. None of us
Yeah.
know. Yeah. Yeah. You meet people all the time that are like suffering from something, and it doesn't even occur of what it could be. In fact, people will more likely say, I might have to try to take gluten out. That could be it. Way before they're going to say, it's just like, oh boy,
Oh,
that
yeah.
again goes back to like what we've been taught and fed our whole lives. A lot of people think that they need dairy foods to get certain nutrients, like it's not available in any other food. Calcium for one, right? Which we know it is readily available in tahini and almonds and kale and bok choy and in way higher levels of absorbency too. So
Yeah.
it's just knowledge and, education.
Yeah, of course. So speaking of knowledge and education, can you expand a little bit more on as far as dairy is concerned, as a food group as a whole? Like what exactly are we consuming when we're drinking a glass of milk, when we are eating a piece of cheese, when we're eating that yogurt? Like what is in it that is just so detrimental to our health?
Yeah. Well, I think all of us need to look at any food that we're eating as you want to put into your body the most good with the least bad. I know that was something that I focused on as an athlete, right? I want to bring in the most good with the least amount of bad, because some foods have things in it that maybe you don't want. So that's the best way to describe what's happening with cow's milk. It has some nutrients in it. Of course it does. It's mother's milk for her baby. Like there better be nutrients in it. So it has some calcium, is fortified with vitamin D. It doesn't actually have vitamin D in it. Nothing does is fortified. And it has some potassium. It has some magnesium. But with those nutrients comes a laundry list of things that we don't want in our system and are not good for us and can really throw us off and perpetuate disease. So some of those things are saturated fats and trans fats. So, most people have kind of an idea of that, that role of saturated fat and trans fat in creating arteriosclerosis and heart disease. And if you eat enough saturated fat and trans fat, you're going to be on the road to our number one killer in the country, right? Heart disease. It also has a really high intense hormone cocktail because it's a pregnant mother. And I'm saying a pregnant mother because they impregnate them immediately. So as she's being milked for the milk that we see in the grocery store, she's already pregnant again. So for all the mothers out there who have been pregnant, and you might have felt a little hormonal during that period of time, during and after, that's what we're drinking. So high levels of estrogen, progesterone, high levels of cortisol, which is our stress hormone, testosterone. 70% of our dietary estrogen that we consume comes from dairy foods. So multiple studies have shown a direct link to prostate cancer and dairy foods. And some studies have shown a direct link to many of our hormonal-based cancers. We all know, like, I don't want to be taking in any more estrogen, right? That's where just even, people are like, oh, I don't want to have soybean or tofu or something because there's estrogen. We don't want to be taking any estrogen. We know that's not good in terms of cancer. And it's especially harmful for the hormonal-based cancers like breast cancer, ovarian cancer, prostate cancer, uterine cancer. So you're really playing with fire, drinking or eating dairy foods. And then if you have a yogurt or a cheese, those are highly condensed versions of a glass of milk, right? So then you're getting more than you ever even thought possible in just a single glass of milk. So that's just a, quick description of some of the reasons that we want to lean into other foods that give us those nutrients, that give us the calcium, give us the magnesium, give us the potassium, which are loads and loads of foods, plenty of plant foods, especially, and then without all that bad.
Exactly. And also speaking of the injustice when it comes to our food, let's talk a little bit about those cows, because I know that, a lot of people tend to gravitate more towards health when they make this switch. Other people, like you and I have experienced for ourselves, we start down that path because we have an emotional connection. We make a specific connection to the empathy that we have for these animals that are being exploited for producing these products that we're consuming, right? So as far as the cows are concerned, for listeners that don't really understand what that process looks like, can you kind of take us through the life cycle of a dairy cow?
Yeah. So I think, we have been, I know we have been fed a lot of lies in terms of, happy cows and grassy fields and wonderfully taken care of. But even if you just want to remove that, right? Because I'm not here to argue what is the difference between the 10,000 cow industrialized farm and the 10 cow 15 cow farmer that cares about his cow's dairy farm, because there's everything, and obviously if you're most 96, 97% of our dairy comes from large industrialized farms. So if you are walking down the street and buying your local, pasture raised, whatever they, all the terms that they use to make us feel good about it, which is, what a lot of people are saying. What I hear a lot, like, oh, no, I buy like I even hear hormone free, and you're like, that's impossible because
exactly.
Right, it's a mammal and it's filled with hormones. So even if you're doing that, if you just stop for a second to think about why farmers are raising cows and impregnating them and having them being milked is for profit. I mean, that's what they do for a living. So if you are to do that and you have the babies of the mothers drink the milk, what's going to happen to your profits? They're going to plummet because you need the people who are going to pay money for the milk to be drinking the milk, us humans. So even in the most wonderful of settings, they are still stealing babies from their mothers. And there's the, 0.5% of farms that don't make any profit, and their babies will stay with them longer. Okay. Cause I always, they're like, no, there's 20 of them in America of those little tiny farms. for the rest of it, and all of the Horizon and Organic Valley and Fairlife and all that shit in the grocery store that they've done a ton of undercover investigations on, is the highest level of horrifying cruelty you've ever seen, both to the cows and how they treat them and the misery a day to day that they live in. But just the fact that the mothers are torn away from their babies at around 24 to 48 hours, so that then we can hook them up to machines, milk the crap out of them at 4 to 5 times a day, so that the milk can go to us, repregnate them, have it happen again and again. And they carry their babies for 9 months, just like we do. They give birth without there's no pain relief. There's no, oh, here's your epidural. So painful. And then the baby's gone into the shed, in the little boxes. They go for veal, and the mother goes through it again and again and again and again until she is so exhausted and so empty that she is considered spent by the industry, which means she just can't produce enough milk. So the farmer's not making the profit that he once was, or she once was. And then she goes off to slaughter. So that's a dairy cow's life.
Yeah. And now, and dairy cows, they, can live, an average of 15, 20 years, maybe 25.
Any cow can. Yeah. Beef cow. I mean, their lifespan is, I know a few on sanctuary properties, 20, 21, 22. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so, of course, and they're not getting, they don't get to retire and, like after they produce for the industry and go, like enjoy their life on a pasture somewhere or get shipped to a sanctuary, unfortunately, that's the McDonald's hamburger.
Exactly. The cheap meat. There's no dairy cow sanctuary. There's 265 million dairy cows on the planet right now, maybe a few more. So there's no sanctuary that has these 265 million dairy cows that be ready for slaughter in, let's say, 2, 3, 4 years. You can't find that. So it's, I didn't know any of this either. Right. Like it's not, I mean, people just don't think about it. It's like, oh, it's just milking a cow. What's the problem? But if you're vegetarian, it doesn't make sense that you're not vegan, because the dairy cows, it's horror, and then they kill them. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? They are dying. They're not kept alive and have this great life after they're milked for a while. It's not we wouldn't even have a room for that many cows on the planet. Yeah. If we kept the dairy cows, sent them to sanctuary.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah. and this is good for listeners to hear, just because some people, they just don't know, like, and that's what we're here for, right? We're here to make sure that people get little pieces of the information so they can put the puzzle together for themselves. And if they feel so compelled to actually look into it a little bit further and go deeper with understanding why so many people, particularly the athletes that are coming out of the woodworks like you, just hitting the scene and being like, hey, you can look like this, you can perform like this, and you don't need any meat, dairy, or eggs to do it. It's like, people are like, okay, why? And so they come to, you at Switch for Good. Right. They come to me at Eating Like You Give It Down. They're like, what's going on with these people? Like, so it's up to us to kind of feed them that information and make sure that people get
and then people can just make their own choices. Right. They can figure out what fits in their view of the world and how it should be and how it should work, and they can make their own decisions. And if they think that maybe that's not quite okay, but they don't really believe it, you can go tour. You could go tour dairy farms. I've been. They'll let you in. I mean, and you're not going to see the really bad stuff, because they're not going to do that while you're there, but you'll see the calves in the little boxes, and you'll see the moms hooked up to the machine. I mean, just that alone to me is like, that's like Matrix stuff. Like, what the hell are we doing? I mean, that's not, and it's not necessary. That's the thing, right? That's your point. Like, it's not a necessary food group for humans. Yeah. If it were, then we'd maybe have a different conversation, but we don't need it at all.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the whole point of the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's not necessary, for sure.
Right.
Oh, cool. So, okay. So now we're coming up on the holidays. And so we've got some people that are like, okay, so I'm learning this information. I want to start making some changes. What the hell, Dotsie, do I make for Thanksgiving? Like, what's going to be the centerpiece of the Christmas dinner? Like, what do you say to that?
Right. I know. Well, so you may have to just disconnect from this need to have like a large, dead bird in the center of the table. Because if you kind of want to go down this path, that's not going to be a part of it. And you might also have to disconnect from there being like a large anything in the middle of the table. Because yes, you can do tofurkey, and yes, you can do, the I think field roast makes a roll, but Thanksgiving is about giving thanks, right? And it's about family and friends and being together and loving on each other and laughing and playing games. And I think that we have definitely, as a society, connected ourselves more to what's on the table than what we're really there for, right? Being together, leaning into each other, enriching relationships. That's what it's about. The food's kind of like a side thing that we do while we're doing that. So that was a big that was helpful for me in my transition, right? Because I had a first Thanksgiving where I was like, well, crap, what am I going to, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? And it was awesome because I was like, I'm going to lean into the people more, you know what I mean? And enjoy the food that I brought. So if you're thinking about doing this, remember that's why you're there, right? It's not for the creamed corn. It's to be there with your grandmother. Like that's just the point. Yeah. And then when you go, be open to going. I recognize that if your the lens of the world has shifted, it may be difficult to see the dead bird in the middle of the table. Still go and take a bunch of vegan dishes. And if you're like, how am I going to make a bunch of vegan dishes? Honestly, I personally think, and this is what I did my first Thanksgiving. I just went to Google. I pulled my three favorite dishes. I like the cream mushroom green beans. I love scalloped potatoes, and I love macaroni and cheese. Okay, so I'm taking those. If you literally go to the internet and put in vegan scalloped potatoes or vegan creamed green beans, and a recipe comes up, a lot of them. And they're amazing. And it's all it is small switches, right? Like you're going to switch out dairy milk for some different plant milks. And the chefs are amazing. They'll always tell you, almond milk's worked best for this, or oat milk works best for this recipe, or what to do. There's replacements for eggs. If you take flaxseed meal and you take a tablespoon of flaxseed meal with 3 tablespoons of water and mix it up, it binds in baking and recipes like an egg. So all of this stuff will just rise to the top. You use Earth Balance instead of dairy butter. It's crazy easy. It really is. So take your favorite dishes, just veganize them. And then don't tell anyone that they're vegan. Definitely don't tell anyone that they're vegan.
That is the best part. I love that.
Right. And just let them go crazy. And then you tell them after or the next day, and they'll be surprised. And just go have a great time with your family. And then, sort of see what happens those days later, because people are going to start asking questions. They're not going to believe how delicious it was. And then you'll have an opportunity, right, to share why you're not eating animals anymore.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's such great advice too. Awesome. Man, Dotsie, it's been so cool having you here on the show. So
this has been awesome.
Yeah, this is really cool. So what kind of final thoughts do you have that you want to leave listeners with before we find out how we can go deeper with you and then say goodbye?
Yeah. Just, I think, especially since it's this time of year, like you said, encouraging people to just focus on progress, not perfection. Not worrying about if they're hearing this episode or many of your other wonderful episodes and they kind of want to try it. Don't let the need to think that you need to do it perfect stop you from just taking a first step. Just do something, one meal, one day in your afternoon burrito. Don't get shredded chicken and put in black beans. Don't get sour cream and stick in avocado. Just take baby steps. No one needs to do this overnight. So just enjoy the new flavors, enjoy the new plants, try a new vegetable every week. I always say that at the market. I still try to do that, and I get in ruts and habits and don't. But try new things, let the flavors come alive, and just remember to take some steps and don't think you have to do it perfectly. And if you mess up, if you want to call it that, no big deal. So we live to fight another day, just as we should with anything, right? Like, don't be so hard on ourselves.
Yeah, totally. Very good advice. Very cool. All right, Dotsie. So tell us your mission with Switch for Good, and then how can listeners find you there? Tell us about your podcast, all that good stuff you got going on.
Yeah. Well, we do. We have a variety of different initiatives at Switch for Good. If you go to switchforgood.org, so it's switch the number 4.org, you can really learn all about us. And we're Switch for Good on like every single social media channel. So super easy. We do have a podcast that is shockingly called Switch for Good. So that's easy to find too. I host it alongside Alexandra Paul, who's a longtime activist. She's also a longtime actress. She was Baywatch star for many years, and she is lovely and funny, and we just have the best time. So yeah, if people feel like tuning into that, we have athletes on and doctors and dietitians and some celebrities, and just, we just do something similar to what you do, right? We just have conversations, and we pull out what people have to bring to the table, and we just try to provide a little bit different type of thinking, right, than the mainstream.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. It has been so awesome having you here. Thank you so much for joining me, Dotsie. You're a freaking rock star.
You too. All right. Thank you.
That was Dotsie Bausch, Olympian, renowned speaker, and co-founder of Switch for Good. Visit switchforgood.org to view the groundbreaking commercial we talked about that aired on NBC during the 2018 Winter Olympic Games closing ceremonies, and also on ABC during the Academy Awards broadcast. And that's switch4good.org. You can find a YouTube link to Dotsie's recap of the USDA 2020 hearing posted by Plant-Based News, which discusses the food injustice, particularly involving people of color. That link is in the show description for this episode within your podcast player. Follow the initiative on Facebook and Instagram at Switch for Good, and tune into the Switch for Good podcast. And when you do, holler at Dotsie and let her know you heard her here on the Eating Like You Give a Damn podcast. This wraps us up for our first 20-episode season of the show, and what an incredible season it has been. We are taking some time off for the holidays and to round up next season's incredible guests, while also helping vegan coaches to maximize their income and impact so they can become better advocates for the global shift towards a plant-based future. Now, if you like this episode, please consider leaving a review in iTunes or Apple Podcasts so that more people can easily find the show. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on the new episodes starting back up after the holidays. If you are new to the podcast and this is your first listen, go back and check out previous episodes. There is such a variety of topics under the plant-based umbrella, and each expert and celebrity guest brings such a unique perspective to each idea. If you're looking for vegan-friendly support and recipes and updates on the show, request to join our Facebook group of Rebels at eatinglikeyougivadamn.com/group. I really appreciate every one of you listeners. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and Dotsie today. And until next time, Veg on, Rebels.